This is our inbox page right now. Doesn't look very good. We're going to fix it. We're going to fix it by having a grid layout so that we have, first of all, the folders on the left-hand side. And then we're going to use a Bootstrap component to show that list, all right? The grid layout that I'm thinking about is what's referred to in the CSS developers world as the holy grail of layouts. Okay, this is the standard layout, which you will see in pretty much every application, every front-end application. You have the header at the top, you have the left nav bar, you have the main content, the right aside, and then a footer, right? This specific layout would have taken a lot of floats and a lot of CSS to achieve before CSS Grid. But now with CSS Grid is super, super simple, right? I'm going to show you how to do that. So let me search for CSS Grid Holy Grail layout. Okay, this is a very standard kind of layout. So it's something like this, right? So you have the header here, you have the main content, the navigation, the sidebar, and then the footer, right? This is super easy to do with CSS Grid. So I'm going to copy the markup over here to my VS Code instance, to the inbox page. And let me comment this out for a bit. We're going to get back to that later. So here, I'm going to paste this content. So you notice here, there is not a lot of styling influenced markup. Okay, so this one's a header. So it's going to go to the header. This one's a nav. Nav is an HTML element that you're supposed to use for navigation. So this is nav, it goes over here. Main is what informs what the main section is. Aside is what's on the side, and footer is what's at the bottom. Why these HTML elements? You can pretty much stick a div for all of them, right? Each one of these can be a div and put the content in there and it's going to work just fine. But with these elements, you're giving more information about your page. Like, what is the header? Just a bunch of divs. How does a machine know what is a header, right? So having this is going to open up things like, for example, accessibility is going to work fine. Somebody is using a screen reader. The screen reader can detect that, okay, this part is a header, and it can jump to the main content when necessary, stuff like that, right? So it is useful in search engine optimizations. Let's say your website is being crawled by a search bot, like a Google bot or a Bing bot. It'll know that this is the header. The content in main is what's more relevant for search and stuff like that. So this adds more meaning to your markup, which is why it's always recommended to use the right tags. This is referred to as semantic HTML. There is a semantic meaning to each of these tags, and it is recommended to use the right tag for the right content. However, just adding these tags is not going to influence styling. You can put all these things here and add content here. It's still going to look like a div, right? Each one is going to look like a div for when the page is rendered. What we want to do is style this so that it looks different, all right? So I'm going to copy these styling elements over here, and let's look at those. I'm going to have a style tag here, and inside the style tag, I'm going to put the stuff. Okay. This is the CSS Grid. Holy Grail layout. It's very simple, right? You'd say display grid, so that the whole thing displays as a grid. And then you have the grid template columns, which is 200 pixels for the left, 200 pixels for the right, and then 1 FR, so takes whatever is in the middle. Rows is basically 1 FR, and the grid gap, the gap between the grids is 10 pixels, and the height is 100 VH. VH stands for the viewport height. So it's expand to 100% of the viewport height, and then the column layout is going to be 200 pixels to the left, 200 pixels to the right. Now, what's going to be inside the grid? Well, there's going to be 3 rows here, which is what is defined by the grid template areas. The first row is going to contain header for all the 3 columns. The second row is going to contain nav for the first column, content for the middle column, and side for the third column. And then the last row is going to contain footer for all of them, right? Now, this is not the same as these elements, right? Just because this is called header doesn't mean that it automatically styles the header this way, right? What we are referring to here is class names. We're going to have to give class names to each of these things, right? I'm going to give the class name of header to header. I'm going to give the class name of content to main, because that's what it is, right? You see here, it's content, not main, right? So I'm going to have to give those class names. So I'm guessing there's, yeah, here it is. So I'm going to copy this stuff here and paste this. So all of these, I apologize, they're not class names, they're grid areas. You have to define what a grid area is, and that's what is referred to over there. Right? See here, header has a grid area called header. You give it an arbitrary name, okay? So that's what this is. Grid area is going to tell it, give the area a name in the grid, and then here in the grid template areas, I am marking it as such, right? So here, now what I'm going to do is, now this is style, right? I didn't have to use Bootstrap. This is just styled by native CSS Grid styling. Now I can put a header content here. It says, let's say I put h1 and hello name. We're going to find the name and put that there. And then this is going to be the nav part. And I'm going to stick this thing in here into the nav. And comment this. And then in my main content, I'm going to have a paragraph, email list, just some temporary stuff here. I don't need a site. I don't need the aside because all I have the folder list on the left-hand side and the list of emails on the right-hand side. So I don't need an aside, right? Footer content, well, let that be there. And now here, I'm going to go back to the grid thing here. I don't need a side here. So what I'm going to do is put content here as well. Okay. So in the second row, there's going to be nav in the left-hand side, and the next two, the two columns, the middle and the right, is going to be content. Let's see how this looks. Shall we? I'm going to refresh this. And here you see, I have the hello name, which is the header. You have the folders on the left-hand side. And then this whole area is the content, just the email list. Perfect. I'm going to remove that nasty inbox header on the top. We don't need that. All right. So now we have kind of like the holy grail layout. Let's go back to the Bootstrap website and try and find some listing. Git bootstrap.com. I'm going to go to the docs, and there should be a component for the list. Go here. List group is probably what it is. Let's see. It'll be good to have a list with the labels as well. Yeah, something like this. Something like this. I'm too lazy. I'm going to look for the exact example that I want. All right, this will work. This will work. I'm going to copy this, and this is going to go to the nav. Okay, I'm going to put this over here. Okay, this is a UL and LI. I don't need multiple LIs because we are going to be looping through this. All right, so this is unordered list. It's a list group, and here is an individual list. And what I'm going to do is stick this th:\each to this li. Okay, because we want the li to repeat as many times as there are folders. Okay, and the th:\text as well, because the text of li needs to be the text that we got from the database. I'm just calling this label, and yeah, 1400 messages. That's fine. We're going to fix that later. We will have to implement the unread functionality and pull that up at runtime. We don't have that yet. I'm just showing the list of folders. All right. Now, how does this look like? Not bad. But why is it not showing the unread messages? Because I have this in li and it is overriding this span. You see here, the span is inside this li element. So when I say th:\text inside li, it's basically blowing away the contents of that li and putting whatever it is in th:\text. So the span is going away. So what I'm going to do is put this th:\text inside another span so that it doesn't basically blow away the contents in that. This is going to be a label, and this can go away, right? So there's going to be two spans inside this li. Okay. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, this is better. Now I have the folders showing up over here. I'm probably going to put this in a card so that it looks a little better. I'm going to go here to the card component and pick a card with a header. I think it'll look good. Header and footer. Well, there you go. So this is what I need, right? I'm going to get the card header, card body, and then I'm going to close that div. Okay. Inside the nav, I'm going to open the card. So this is div card header, and then I'm going to have this as folders as a header, and the card body. Once UL closes, I'm going to close the div for the card body. And then is there an open div? Yes, one for the card itself. And I'm going to format this guy so that it looks a little better. Okay. Now let's see how this looks. I'm not going to tweak too much. Yeah, this is fine. I'm going to leave it as this for now. So we have the folders, and depending on what folders the user creates, we're going to show them there. But I think, I kind of alluded to this in the last video. We need default folders, right? We don't want people logging in for the first time, signing up for the first time, and creating, I want a folder called inbox. I want a folder called sent items. No, those things have special meaning. An inbox is the default place where a message comes in. Sent items is the default place where you send a message, it has to go there. So I want those folders to always be there. So I'm going to create some infrastructure where I'm kind of initializing the folders. I'm thinking of creating it like a service. First, let me check this in, all right? So I'm going to have, there's a bunch of changes that I've done. I'm going to check this in and call this add folder view to inbox page. All right. Commit. And now let's mess with this a little bit. I'm going to create like a service in the folders package. I'm going to call this folder service. And this is going to be a Spring service. It's a stereotype annotation. I'm going to have a method here which returns the default folders all the time. Okay. I'm going to have a public folder. It's actually a list of folders. So there's going to be list of folders. I'm going to make this fetch default folder. Okay. There's going to be a method which is going to get like 3 folders, and it's going to get it all the time. Okay. So I'm going to turn arrays start as list of, let's say, new folder. I'm going to need the username. So, or the user ID. I have user ID. I accept user ID as an argument. For which user am I creating this? We may not be referring to the user ID in our view because we're just getting the labels, but it's still nice to populate the user ID. I'm going to have a folder called inbox, and I'm going to have the color be white. Okay, no color. I'm going to have another folder called sent items, and this is going to be green. I'm going to have a folder called important, and this is going to be red. Let me actually make this blue. Okay, so I'm returning a predefined set of folders. Okay, and this is going to get the same folders for whenever somebody is logged in. So what I'm going to do is in my controller, I'm going to call this guy, right? So you see here how I'm getting the user folders. I'm also going to get a default folders and show that as well. Okay, so I'm going to auto-wire the folder service. Okay, and import folder service. And now I'm going to call that method on folder service. And here's what that looks like. Just like I'm doing these two, I'm going to call this default folders. And instead of calling the repository, I'm going to call folder service, which is the service that we just created, .fetch default folder. And I'm going to pass in the user ID. So it's going to get me a bunch of default folders for this guy. And then I'm going to go over here. And here I have this piece of code, which is rendering all of the folders here, right? You see this? Everything inside this nav is being rendered here. So I'm going to call this folders with the default folders. And then I'm going to create one more for user folders. Okay, so this is UL over here, ends over here, and then paste this. I'm going to call this user folders. And then this is going to be user folders. This one is going to be default folders. And I know that default folders are always going to be there. User folders may or may not be there. So I'm going to basically put a th:\if. And check if user exists. I don't know if it can do kind of like a nullability check like this. We will find out. Okay, so if user folders exist, then look through user folders and print that as well. Otherwise, just show the default folder. So there's going to be two panels here, right? What happened? There is a semicolon missing. Homepage controller 37, inbox controller 37. Did I miss a semicolon? Oh, yes, I did. Okay. One more time. All right. So this guy's inside the card. I'm going to have to get that out. But it seems to be working, right? We have the default folders, and here are the folders that we asked Cassandra to insert. All right, so let's fix that. The card should end over here. One of the divs should go here. And that should take care of the layout. Okay, so that seems to have fixed the layout. Now, what I'm noticing here is this, basically this whole code is repeated twice, okay? And not only that, this is code that'll show up in all templates, right? Let's say you're in the compose template, you will still need to see the folders. You're in viewing an email, you still need to see the folders. So it makes sense to extract this out as a component and have it in, added to each of these templates, right? So I'm going to do that now. Go over here and create a folder called components. All right. And over here, create a new file called Folderlist.html. This is going to contain the component which shows the list of folders, right? This is what we want to do here. So here I'm going to have the sample HTML. I actually don't need any of this stuff. In the body, I'm going to have a div and a th:\fragment, and I'm going to give this a name, folder list, and now I have a component that I can use everywhere else, right? So what I'm going to do is bring this guy in here, right? So this whole thing needs to be that component. So I'm going to start from this div, go all the way to the other card over here, take this out and put this in this component. Okay, so now this is a component which is looping through default folders and showing them all. Now, hang on a minute. What is default folders? It doesn't know what this is. The inbox page knew what default folders was because we set it in the model in the controller. But now this is a component. So this needs to be passed into the component. So what I'm going to do is pass it as an argument over here. So when you do th:\fragment, you can specify an argument to whatever is being passed in. I'm going to call this folders. Okay. And I need the label as well. So let me stick the label here as well. So I'm going to say panel name and then folders. And then what I'm going to put here is the panel name, th:\text equals the panel name. All right. And now here I'm going to loop through the folders. So now the default folders. Okay. And now I'm basically doing the same logic for something that is passed in. Okay. Now this is my th:\fragment. I can also stick that th:\if over here so that this thing renders only if that exists, right? That's a handy thing to have. So I'm going to put this thing here and then say, render this component only folders exist. Again, I haven't validated it. I don't know if it's going to, not show up if the folder doesn't exist. We will find out soon. All right. So this is my component and it is ready for use. So now I can go back here to my inbox page and basically remove everything else in this nav because we are basically going to be calling this component twice. All right. Over here, I'm going to have th:\insert as a way for me to insert that component that we have over there. The name of the component is, well, it's folders list, right? Is that what we called it? Folder list, but this is in components/folder list. So this is going to be component/folder list. And then that's the HTML. And the name of the component is also folder list. And this takes a couple of arguments, right? What are the arguments? First, it takes the panel name. And the second one is the folders, right? So panel name is going to be, the first one is folders, all right? And then the second parameter is the list of folder entities itself. So I'm going to have folders equals, and then this one needs to be resolved. It's not a static value. And what we call it, default folders, right? We called it default folders. So I'm going to put default folders here. Then close this and close the div, all right? So basically what I'm doing here is using this as the component and passing in arguments, right? So I'm going to locate the component first. We're passing in two arguments. The panel name is folders and folders is the default folders, which is what I'm passing over here. And now I can replicate this and say, well, I need to do the same thing for user folders as well. So user folders, the panel name is user folders, and then the list of folders that it needs to loop through is user folders. Now let's see if this works. Ideally, there should be no difference, and I'm not seeing a difference. It could also mean that it didn't work. So let's make a change. I'm going to have the default folder first, just to verify. Okay, so this is working fine. So the display is essentially the same, but what I've done is I've kind of isolated out that code so that there is just this component here, right? I'm basically invoking that same component twice with multiple arguments. So there is minimal code. Now what I can do is basically stick these two in every template, every nav, and then it's going to work fine. In fact, what I can do is create a nav component and put this thing in here, and that's going to work fine too, right? It's basically going to show this nav component everywhere. I'm hesitating a little bit to do this because that nav component would need to take 4 arguments, right? It needs to take the panel name for the first one, folders for the first one, panel name for the second one, folders for the second one. Not a fan of that. So I'm fine with copying these 2 lines. It's not too bad. We have the folder display, some form of folder display out there. We still haven't addressed the unread count. It's all showing 14, right? It's hard-coded right now. We're going to fix that when we add that second table to Cassandra. But for now, we're not going to bother with it. We're going to move to showing the messages, right? This is where the other table comes into the picture, which is the messages table, right? Fetching messages by ID. So let's implement that and show that in the inbox page so that we're seeing messages in reverse chronological order. I am going to check in these changes, commit these changes. Let's say add folder display with layout. Oh, this is the homepage work that we have done so far. And I see curly seems to be odd. I see the red squiggly, so I'm not sure if this is missing. Well, this one's closed over here. These are closed over here. I think this one is an extra one, all right? So there was an extra curly over there. So I'm going to fix this. I'm going to add this to the previous commit, all right? Commit staged, and amend the previous commit so it gets added to the previous commit as well. All right, so we have committed this state of the code. Now we are going to move on to showing email listing. So see you in the next video.